evening, and welcome back to another episode of Paranormal Storytime. My name is Alex, and tonight I'm going to tell you two stories. I want to thank the two Reddit users that let me feature their stories, and without further ado, let's begin. The first story. So I've told a lot of people in my life about this, usually only people close to me, because it makes me seem foolish with how cliche it sounds. But I've never properly written down the whole story. About 9 years ago, I lived in an apartment in a tourist town in Colorado. Kind of an old miners' town that is popular both with the locals of the nearby city and tourists. It sits in a nice valley at the base of a popular mountain with a lovely little downtown, and is just an overall delightful place to live. The apartment was the main floor of an old building with about 4 units in the main building. According to Google, it was built in 1909. It wasn't in the best shape and wasn't one of the pretty Victorian buildings, but it was an affordable way to live in a lovely town. The unit itself was pretty odd, I think more so than the other ones in the building. It had an ancient brick fireplace that didn't work because the chimney was removed to build above it, and had wood paneling on the walls. The weirdest part for sure was that in the kitchen, in between the fridge and the shelving, was a door in the wood paneling. It was just a cutout in the paneling itself, so it wasn't apparent unless you were looking for it, because it had no knob and instead had only a latch for a padlock. You had to step up to go inside, and then inside was a dirt floor and unfinished brick walls and just wood beams on the ceiling. It sloped gradually upwards towards the back, so if you wanted to get the very back, you'd have to crawl on your stomach in the dirt. Yeah, I never did that. There was a bare light bulb on the ceiling with a switch, but the back stayed dark. By the way, this room was in the middle of the whole house. It seemed like a cellar or basement or something, but it sloped upwards towards the middle of the house. Just weird. We used it for storage, but for the most part avoided it because it was so odd. We found a few animal bones and straps hanging from the pipes inside, like something had been tied up. Also found a few newspapers from the 60s and even a few old kids' drawings. Let me say, first of all, that I'm typically a skeptic until given proof that can be explained any other way. I've been fascinated by the paranormal most of my life, but nearly all evidence I've ever seen for most paranormal things, they seem easily dismissible with other explanations. My mom and I used to stay overnight at an authentic haunted house every Halloween for years when I was a kid, and I never saw anything compelling no matter how much I wanted to. So the apartment was technically 2-bedroom, but both bedrooms were very tiny and you had to go through one to get to the other. So my roommate ended up preferring to sleep on the couch. This didn't bother me and worked out fine for us because we were really close. I can't remember the exact order of things that happened, but most of it focused on her. She woke up with 3 scratches on her back a couple of times. Often she would get them on her arms when she reached down to get something off the floor in front of the couch. Once it happened to me. I was sitting on the couch and went to move to sit in the chair across from it while I talked to my roommate. It was summer, so I was in shorts. I sit with my legs up on the seat usually, so I moved and pulled my legs up when I felt burning on the back of my calf. I had 3 scratches on my calf that were bleeding slightly. I had couple of feet and didn't feel anything before that. The scratches were fresh. This only ever happened near the couch. There was activity in the kitchen where the strange room was. My roommate would regularly hear footsteps in the kitchen when she was falling asleep. I brushed it off as just her dreaming or hearing the neighbors or the house creaking. But I heard it once when we were up late talking. I asked, "What the hell is that?" genuinely afraid. She said it was what she was talking about and that she heard it most nights. It was definitely in the kitchen and they were definitely footsteps. I never heard it any other time. My roommate also couldn't use the kitchen light. This is a weird one. She offhandedly mentioned that the ceiling light in the kitchen didn't work. I was confused and asked if the bulb went out, and she said no, it's never worked. Like it was obvious. I got up to show her and I turned it on. It went on fine. A little later we were talking about it and she went to flip it on and it didn't work. I got up to see and no joke, when she turned around to face me, it turned on. I told her and it went off again as she turned her back towards it. Problems with other electronics also happen pretty often. My roommate has been vegan pretty much her whole life because she doesn't really like meat. One week she started craving red meat. We're buying package after package of roast beef deli meat that she ate straight out of the bag. This one could have been potentially a hormone thing or something, but it was definitely weird. Never happened again. We both struggle with anxiety and depression, but hers got significantly more severe as well. She slept a lot and had trouble working. This wasn't exactly a new problem for her, but it definitely got worse. I do tarot readings for myself for clarity. Yes, I'm a skeptic by default, but I've been doing tarot since I was a kid, and it always worked for me, so I use it even if I don't know why it works. And one time, I did a reading for another friend that was visiting. As I was laying out the cards, I suddenly got really emotional and upset. Looking at the cards with how I was feeling, I just remember thinking, this isn't a reading for my friend anymore. Without looking at the cards any further, I immediately stopped and put the cards away. I felt like something had invaded my body and tried to use my cards to communicate. It was a horrible feeling that has never happened in the decades that I've been doing tarot. Things got worse when we were working on moving out. I mean, it just seemed like we kept hitting roadblocks. We couldn't seem to get everything done in time and we were rushing like crazy. About a week before we had to be out, my landlady called me. This was the worst thing that happened, and the thing that sounds most like a cliche horror movie. The voice on the other end was male and very deep. He was talking very angrily in another language, but not one I could recognize. It wasn't even Latin or anything like in the movies. Totally bizarre sounding. As it went on, it got faster and angrier. At this point, I was scared and my roommate was looking at me and I could tell she knew what was happening because she looked horrified just from looking at my face. I think I was covering my mouth from fear. At the end, it just turned into a loud growl that got louder and louder before it cut off. I think I started crying. My landlady called back and apologized and said she was driving through a tunnel. After I left, I had a few people tell me that they heard that the town used to have a history of occult and satanic behavior. Basically, I think whatever we were dealing with was not something that had died or just leftover energy of some kind. I think it was something that had been invited into the house sometime in the past. It seemed to be consciously reacting to us and targeting my roommate intelligently. This just didn't feel like something that was natural to this realm. I also heard that they can utilize energy from electricity to drain people. It felt like something that both functioned on instinct, but also was more intelligent and powerful than us by far. It did feel like being laughed at by something that looked whole experience changed my thoughts on a lot of things and made me a little less quick to assume something to be complete utter nonsense just because there's no compelling physical evidence. The second story. This happened to me last night and I don't know how to explain it. For a bit of a context, my father recently became ill, so I moved home to help out my mother for a while. I still have young siblings and a grandparent living in the house, so I decided to stay in my parents' caravan out back. They only use it in the summer, so I thought I could get some privacy. The caravan gets cold at night, so my dad gave me an electric heater to warm it up. But my mother is very worrisome, and she was thinking that leaving it overnight could start a fire. I promise this is relevant. So last night I went to sleep, and around 4 a.m. I heard banging on my window. I jumped up and opened the curtain, and my mother was standing there. I was a little worried something happened to my father, but she was just there to tell me to turn the heater off. I say, great, thanks for waking me up for that, then try to get some sleep. This is where the weirdness begins. Just as I turn over, I hear very faint crying. At first, I thought it was someone in the house, but it was coming from the direction of the shed behind the caravan. I think to myself, it's maybe just some fox or other animal, but it slowly starts getting louder. Not extremely loud, but loud enough that it was keeping me up. I fling the curtains open to scare whatever animal was out there, but it was no animal. A child-sized shadow thing was sitting against the shed, its head in its knees, crying. I've never jumped up so fast in my life. I instantly turned on all the lights and ran back to the window, but it was gone, and the crying had stopped. I quickly wrote down all the features of it so I wouldn't forget, and I stayed up with all the lights on all night. I'm scared it will come back. It was child-sized and it was like a shadow. The only features I could see were its body shape. I've never been so scared in my life. Does anybody have any info on what this could be? You guys know that I don't usually comment on the stories, but I wanted to say that whatever that thing was, it was clearly trying to get your attention to come out. I think it knew that you were safe inside the caravan, so even if it comes back, which may be a possibility, as long as you're inside the house or inside the caravan, I think you could be safe. The crying is obviously to scare you and to make you come out, or to make you worry that it could be a child. I've read a lot of stories similar to yours, and they all kind of have the same narrative. It's really interesting that it didn't actually feel like attacking your mother or doing something to her, as I don't know what it might be. I suggest you to go with the usual protection methods. If you're religious, then you can use whatever protective symbols you have in your religion. If not, you can maybe go with black salt. I have a video on how to make black salt. I'll put it on the screen somewhere. Or you can go with protection sigils. You can imagine a very bright light surrounding you or the caravan. But if you need more help, or if this keeps coming back, or if you hear the cry again, then you're welcome to message me, and we'll look into it more. But if anyone knows what this thing could be, tell me in the comment down below. That's all I have for you tonight. I hope you have enjoyed this. If you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. It really helps a lot. And I will see you in my next one. Bye bye.